we bring you Killer Wives, episode 33. Cannibal. These are the case facts against Omema Nelson, who castrated and decapitated her own husband. Isn't trust a bitch? Costa Mesa, California. Famous for being one of California's most electric and vibrant cities. Sun at the beach. But also made famous for the murder of one Mr. William Nelson. Not only did Omema kill her husband with multiple strikes from a clothes iron, she continued her torture of his corpse by decapitating his head from his body. If that wasn't enough, she then castrated him. But she was not through with him yet, because she cooked portions of his body for which she ate parts of. She fried both of his hands and prepared to get rid of his torso in a plastic bag. But how does one get away with this form of mutilation without neighbors hearing or being overcome with the rotting smell of death? As a combat veteran, I was once asked what a dead body smells like. A simple answer is there is no one distinct smell, but yet varying different odors based upon what level of decomposition the body has gone through based on two different factors: the weather and time. A decomposing body similar to those found in the homes of killer wives ranges anywhere from a very sweet rotting fruit smell to a very bitter sulfur-like rotting egg bomb. But how does one get away with dismemberment struggling sounds? The smell of rotting flesh, or worse, cooked flesh within a very close-knit narrow hall passageways of that apartment complex. Did anyone bother to pick up the phone to dial 911? Or have we as neighbors become complacent and complicit to the pleas for help that end in murder? Understandably, no one would want to get involved, but everyone in that building would have been involved after taking a strong whiff of fried human flesh. You're watching MNN, the Men's Channel. If you are a regular follower of the Killer Wives series, you know by now that each story begins with the phrase, "Isn't trust a bitch?" Now this phrase is not meant to be negative. This phrase is meant to emphasize that the men who were murdered trusted their wives more than they trusted a friend, and definitely more than they trusted an enemy. That's odd. How can you trust somebody and then they kill you? Now, in most cases, these wives will take that trust and shoot their husbands in their sleep, in their back, in the head, when he has his back turned. They will poison his food or drink. They will have a lover kill their spouse that he knows nothing about. Whatever the case may be, she uses his blind trust in order not to resist his life being taken. She needs no fighting back. But the worst case scenario is when a wife uses the guise of promissory kinky sex to bind her husband's hands and legs to the marital bed just before killing him. And this case is one of those cases. Now, Mrs. Omema Ari Nelson and Bill Nelson had been married for less than 3 weeks before she slaughtered him, worse than any case we have ever presented you on this channel. Now, the couple had known one another for a total of 5 weeks. I did say 5 weeks and not years. 5 weeks. But the bloom had fallen off the marital rose, I guess, on the fall morning of 1991. This was Thanksgiving Day, and where the traditional turkey should have been on the menu, Bill was substituted in his place as the main course. Now, Omami had already hatched out her devious plan for prosperity in life, and Bill was not a part of that plan. Bill was nothing more than a sugar daddy to her, and now with access to his assets, she no longer needed Bill to be that sugar daddy. Now, in 3 short marital weeks, Mr. Nelson was nothing more than a short-term solution to the basic needs she had struggled to pay her entire life. And now he had to die for that generosity. This is always the case in the Killer Wife series. Now, Omami invited Bill for a holiday tryst in the apartment to the back room before meal planning. This was a tease. She tied his arms and legs to the bed and simulated a bondage sex act and began to get him aroused. Now, she was sure that Bill trusted her. She grabbed a metal lamp from the nightstand, shown here, and bashed in his skull in an effort to take his life. But Bill didn't die with that first blow. That was bad for her. When that didn't kill him, immediately she quickly grabbed a pair of scissors that she placed on a nightstand and continued to stab him in his chest, his stomach, and his face. His chest, his stomach, and his face. This is the love of a wife. Now, Bill constantly flailed against the bondage to get free, to save his life. But you see, Omami was just getting started with using close-at-hand objects as weapons to kill her husband of 3 weeks. Moving from one weapon to the next, she then reached out for a clothing iron, just like you iron your clothes with. And while still straddling Bill's body, she used it on him. With this last instrument, Omami pummeled him to death with the iron until the instrument that she ironed clothes with broke in her hands. Now I ask you, imagine the sheer force it would take to break such an item. When Omami was sure her husband of 3 weeks was no longer going to resist, she dismounted his body in a celebratory fashion. Now she was set out on how she would conceal his murder by dismantling his corpse. Dismantling his corpse is always the goal for women who are much smaller than the husbands they kill, because he is easy to take out of the home in pieces over one heavy body. If you took him out in one big body, you had to drag him to the lobby of their apartment complex, people would see you. I mean, who would want to drag a linebacker, overweighted corpse out of the front door of a building undetected by the other residents? Now, Omami was not worried though, because she had plans for Bill's entire body. She went to another room and prepared herself for human dismemberment, not by donning a white outfit. She did this by donning red lipstick, a red hat, and red high-heeled shoes before returning to a still warm body. Now, when she went to that adjoining room, picture this. Blood-strewn mattress detectives found in the house where Bill was slaughtered. This is the mattress shown here. Then she would use every ounce of strength she had to drag Bill to the kitchen. There she would begin dismantling procedures she had planned in her head long before saying the words, "I do." And here are pictures where blood was smeared on the route to that kitchen. Since Plan A was a rousing success, Omami decided to put Plan B into action. The first heartless act she accomplished in Plan B was in taking Bill's head off of his shoulders. In other words, she decapitated him. Now, out of a fit of rage against Bill or for revenge against the men she believed harmed her during her tumultuous childhood, she castrated Bill's penis straight from his body. You marry a guy and within 3 weeks you castrate him. If that isn't true love, I don't know what is. Now she then removed both of Bill's hands at the wrist and dismembered the remaining portions of his body, which she placed in a black garbage bag before putting that garbage bag in a leather duffel bag. Now the smaller portion of Bill's body she prepared for cooking in the kitchen, where she prepared all of the meals in the home over that short 3 weeks. She made sure she strung Bill along long enough that he would trust her. Now, with his head that she decapitated, she boiled Bill's head for some odd reason before wrapping it up in aluminum foil and placing it in the refrigerator for a later date. Now here is a photo of the actual open freezer. That aluminum ball you see is Bill's head. She then fried both his left and right hands in oil on top of the stove in a frying pan. Not bad enough. She oven baked and basted until barbecue soft a portion of Bill's ribs. Now, as the ribs were cooking, she tried in earnest to get rid of the portions of Bill's body that she was not going to use. She cut smaller pieces and shoved those parts down the garbage disposal. Can you imagine putting human flesh down the garbage disposal that's just meant for vegetables? Now, neighbors will report that they heard her garbage disposal running for about 48 hours straight. What the hell are you doing over 48 hours with a garbage disposal? Now, as dinner approached, Omemi took a break and settled in at the table for a Bill feast. In Omemi's own post-arrest confession to a psychiatrist, she declared, "I did his ribs just like in a restaurant. It's so sweet. It's so delicious. I like mine tender." I don't think if I was Bill, I would have married this particular woman. Now, that psychiatrist asserted that Omemi was in a psychotic state when she offed and ate Bill, and added that in his 20 years of practice, he had never experienced a conversation with a subject so bizarre and so psychotic. But a diagnosis of psychosis is not enough to protect you when you make plans beyond devouring a person as to what to do with the large portions of their body. Not enough. Over the next few days, Omemi enlisted a pair of her ex-boyfriends to help her get rid of Bill's leftover remains. She did this while enjoying the ride in his top-down, classic mint-condition 1975 red Corvette Stingray limited edition. What a car, what a ride. Now, she allowed those two ex-lovers and members of the murderous choir that she had to use his prized vehicle to do her dirty work for her. Now, she stuffed some of her husband's body parts into garbage bags, like I said, and she offered a friend $75,000 to help her dispose of his remains. But that friend told the police immediately. Now, she wanted the fellows that she had to do it to cruise the town looking for secluded spots to dump his body parts where they would not be found or reassembled. Now, either due to incompetency or willful neglect, her co-conspirators did not prove to be impeccable. You have to do this if you're planning murder, remember. Now, on that crisp 56-degree morning of December the 1st in Costa Mesa, California, police got a tip about body parts being seen inside of a parked car that belonged to Bill Nelson. Now, the parts, of course, also belonged to Bill Nelson. And it would seem that Frick and Frack forgot to cover up the unwanted body parts in their outing as wannabe criminals. Next time, get better co-conspirators. The officers ran the plates on the vehicle and it came back as registered to Mr. Bill Nelson. A detective and a uniformed police officer dropped by Omemi's home to inform her of the discovery, and once the pair were entered the apartment, they were overcome by a stench of death that wafted throughout the apartment complex. Now, upon a close inspection of a possible homicide scene, they found newspaper-wrapped pieces of Bill's body in the refrigerator, as seen here. When police raided their particular apartment, they found suitcases and a plastic bag soaked with dark liquid from his body parts. And in the frying pan, there was Mr. Nelson's hands. And when they opened the refrigerator, there was Mr. Nelson's head with stab wounds. Coincidentally, police had also found severed heads in Jeffrey Dahmer's refrigerator earlier that year in July of 1991, if you remember that case.
You're watching M&N, the Men's Channel.
Now, Omemi successfully disposed of 130 pounds of Bill's body, and authorities were never able to find the missing body parts. They promptly arrested Omemi and read her Miranda rights for the charge of first-degree murder. Now, what would happen next is something that wives who are arrested in such cases believe is clever on their part to hide behind. But police know better after dealing with hundreds, literally thousands of cases annually. Now, Mrs. Omemi Nelson immediately claimed self-defense. That's right, self-defense. She said that in addition to trading out her body, Bill was a BDSM enthusiast, which stands for bondage and sadomasochism. Now, she said he routinely bound her against her will and raped her. She further asserted that Bill had raped her on Thanksgiving morning and that she had feared he would kill her. So I wonder how Bill got bound. Now later at her trial, these words would come back to haunt her in the face of the jury who had witnessed the horrific photos of Bill's dismembered body that were sprayed around the room, to include his frying hands in the pot. At trial, Orange County Deputy District Attorney Randy Pawlowski countered that Omami was a scam artist who preyed on men specifically using bondage sex games to rob them. At the time of the slaying, in fact, she faced 3 felony charges regarding a 1990 incident in which she allegedly tied up an ex, slapping him around, and demanded money at gunpoint. And as I said before, wives in these cases always have a go-to, and that is to claim abuse, neglect, sexual assault, or mental anguish if it will keep them off of death row or definitely out of prison. Now, in fact, most wives in these cases are shocked that society sees the lives of men or their dead husbands as something to protect over women's assertion of innocence. They consider men pretty low. But Omami and her lawyer, charged to protect his guilty client, were just getting started with Bill's post-mortem character assassination. They were just getting started. In court, Omami unleashed her fury on Bill. She made claims against sexual terror and other abuses to which Bill had subjected her. Acts that reportedly included him pimping out his Egyptian-born fashion model bride to kinky old creeps in exchange for rent, cash, and in one case, a car. The only issue with her story was that no one corroborated it, and nor could any of the men she said be found or existed. Now, in turn, her defense lawyer painted a horrific, heartbreaking portrait of Omami's ordeal growing up in Egypt as a child. He said she had been subjected to female genital mutilation, or what is known as clitoral circumcision, and submitted herself to loathsome sexual humiliation in order to survive growing up. Now, what her childhood has to do with the man she married and the situation that happened a world away, I have no idea. But her defense attorney also portrayed Bill Nelson as a sick sadist who tortured his wife sexually, physically, and psychologically. When she adopted a kitten, for example, Bill allegedly pulled the animal from Omami's lap in a moving car and tossed it out of the window, he said. Now, this story, too, was made up to besmirch a dead man's character. It's easy to do that. He can't fight back for himself. At this point in the case, we do not know whether or not a kitten was thrown out of the window, but we do know that she bludgeoned, killed, decapitated, castrated, dismembered, fried, baked, boiled, frozen, and ate her own husband. Now, compared to all those points, I would say that the kitten got off lucky. After all, of the evidence was from the prosecution and the defense, the jury was sequestered for a verdict on January 4th, 1993. It would be 2 years and 2 months after Bill had been murdered. The jury came back with a verdict and declared Omami Nelson guilty of second-degree murder. Now, Superior Court Judge Robert Fitzgerald ultimately sentenced Omami to 27 years to life in prison. Between her sentence in 1993 and her subsequent parole hearing in 2011, she got married again behind bars. Imagine that. She got married again. She married another older gentleman who was a sugar daddy just like Bill was. That was her MO that she used her entire adult life just to take care of herself. Not to take care of those gentlemen, but to take care of herself. And when she came up for parole in 2011, she insisted that she was not a monster and pointed out that she had never hurt the man she married while incarcerated, her new husband. Even though in the trailer where the couple had conjugal visits, there were knives in the kitchen. So sex is torture in one situation and different in another. Now the parole board remained unimpressed. She was expected to serve the remainder of her term behind bars where she belongs. In her defense, she told the court, if I didn't defend my life back then, I would have been dead. She says, I'm sorry it happened, but I'm glad I lived. I'm sorry I dismembered him. That's sort of like saying to somebody, I'm sorry I spilled milk on the table while you were eating. Now, however, she declined to explain why she cooked him. She is not eligible to seek parole again until 2026, and hopefully they don't let her out. For Killer Wives, this is Charles. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next time.